Before we dive into today's shocking story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more celebrity news and exclusive revelations. Turn on notifications so you never miss our latest updates. No one saw it coming. Not the entertainment reporters crowding the courthouse steps, not the fans following every development online, and certainly not Sean "Diddy" Combs himself. Day 9 of the Diddy trial started with routine testimony, but ended with Jennifer Lopez. Yes, that Jennifer Lopez, walking confidently toward the witness stand. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge seemed taken aback. Diddy, who had maintained his composure through days of damaging testimony, suddenly stiffened. His attorney leaned over, whispering urgently, but Diddy's eyes never left Lopez as she was sworn in. It had been decades since their relationship ended. Most people had moved on, focusing instead on Lopez's marriages, her successful films, her music career. The 90s romance with Diddy seemed like ancient history, a brief chapter in both their lives that had been closed long ago. Or so everyone thought. The gallery was already packed with reporters and spectators. When word spread that Jennifer Lopez was testifying, courthouse security had to turn people away. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Every eye was fixed on Lopez as she took her seat at the witness stand. Elegant but serious in a cream-colored pantsuit, Diddy's legal team exchanged worried glances. The prosecution team sat up straighter, shuffling through notes that clearly hadn't been prepared for this witness. No one had seen her name on any expected witness list. Lopez adjusted the microphone, her expression neutral but determined. Her voice was clear and steady when she began. "I'm here to tell the truth about what happened, about what I saw, about why I left." That simple statement sent shock waves through the courtroom. For years, their breakup had been attributed to infidelity, to scheduling conflicts, to the normal pressures of two rising stars. But from her first sentence, Lopez made it clear. She was about to rewrite that narrative completely. Before we continue, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following information is taken directly from the testimony given during the federal proceedings against Sean "Diddy" Combs, as reported by multiple courtroom sources and verified against official transcripts. Nobody expected Jennifer Lopez to appear in court that day. The room was tense, eyes focused on the prosecution's witness list until her name was called. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even the judge froze momentarily. No announcement had prepared anyone. No pre-written statement preceded her. Just Jennifer Lopez walking confidently to the stand, her expression resolute and determined. Until that moment, Diddy had maintained a carefully crafted image throughout the trial. He arrived each day in designer suits, projecting confidence, occasionally smiling at supporters in the gallery. But something shifted when Lopez entered the room. Maybe it was the sight of someone who truly knew him during his rise to power. Maybe it was the realization that Lopez had nothing to lose by speaking now. Maybe it was the sudden understanding that some secrets he thought were buried might finally come to light. Whatever it was, Diddy's usual composure cracked visibly. Lopez wasn't there as a celebrity or a global icon. She was there as a woman who had witnessed behaviors firsthand, who had made the difficult decision to walk away, and who had stayed silent for nearly 25 years. And when she began to speak, the courtroom wasn't prepared for what they would hear. "I want to start by saying this isn't easy," Lopez began, her voice steady, but with an unmistakable undercurrent of emotion. "I've built a life and career far removed from this period. I've moved on. But watching the news, seeing the allegations, hearing the testimony from others, I realized my silence was no longer an option." The judge nodded, giving her permission to continue. The jury leaned forward, captivated by this unexpected witness. Diddy's attorney scribbled furiously on a legal pad, occasionally passing notes to his client, who seemed to be struggling to maintain his composure. Mr. Combs and I were in a relationship from 1999 to 2001, Lopez continued. During that time, I saw behaviors that disturbed me deeply. Behaviors that ultimately led me to end our relationship and distance myself from him completely. The prosecution approached with a document. Ms. Lopez, can you identify this? It was a photograph. Lopez and Diddy at a nightclub, smiling for cameras. She nodded, but her expression darkened. This was taken the night of the nightclub shooting in December 1999, she said. What the public didn't see was what happened before and after this photo. It started like any other day of the trial. The room buzzed with low conversations. The ETE press hunched in their designated rows, and lawyers whispered strategies as they waited for what they assumed would be another former associate or employee of Diddy's empire. But when Jennifer Lopez's name was called, the room changed instantly. You could hear a pin drop. Some people thought it was a mistake. Others thought it might be a different Jennifer Lopez. But the way the prosecution stood confidently, the way Diddy suddenly sat up straighter, told everyone this was real. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised, but maintaining decorum. And Diddy, who'd been projecting calm confidence throughout the proceedings, suddenly looked cornered. His lawyer placed a hand on his arm, a gesture caught by the courtroom sketch artist that would later be described as restraining rather than reassuring. Lopez walked to the witness stand with measured steps. No eye contact with anyone. She didn't even glance at Diddy. Thank you for being here, Ms. Lopez, the prosecutor began. Can you tell us how you came to know the defendant? Lopez nodded, took a breath, and began recounting how she met Diddy in 1999 when her music career was taking off following her breakout film role in Selena. We were introduced through mutual connections in the music industry, she explained. At first, it seemed exciting. He was charming, successful, powerful. He showed interest not just in me, but in my career. He had ideas, connections, influence. The prosecutor nodded. And how did your professional relationship develop into a personal one? It happened quickly, Lopez admitted. Looking back, I can see the red flags, but at the time, I was caught up in it all. The lifestyle, the attention, the way he made everything seem possible. She described how Diddy had positioned himself as both romantic partner and career advisor, gradually blending these roles until they became indistinguishable. He would say things like, "I know what's best for you. I know this industry better than anyone. Trust me." Lopez's voice remained steady, but her hands clasped tightly in her lap. And at first, I did trust him. The prosecutor approached with another document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter this into evidence as Exhibit 47. It was a contract, a business agreement from 2000 with Lopez's signature. She identified it, explaining that Diddy had insisted she sign it for a music production deal. Did you have independent legal counsel review this before signing? The prosecutor asked. Lopez shook her head. No, he said his lawyers had handled everything, that it was standard, that bringing in outside attorneys would complicate things unnecessarily. She paused. I later discovered this contract gave him unusual control over aspects of my career that went well beyond the specific project we were discussing. I've kept this inside for a long time, Lopez said, her voice slightly lower but still clear. I've built a successful career, starred in movies, sold millions of records, but none of that erases what I saw, what I experienced, and who made it happen. She glanced briefly at Diddy for the first time since taking the stand. He did, Lopez told the court that the breaking point came in early 2001, just weeks before their public breakup. It started, like many troubling incidents in Hollywood, with what seemed like a normal invitation. He called it a strategic meeting with important industry executives, she explained. It was supposed to be about expanding my reach, potential collaborations, the next phase of my career. After the Club New York incident, things had been strained between us, but he framed this as a professional opportunity too important to miss. Their 3DE meeting was scheduled at a private residence in the Hamptons, she said. When she arrived, the sprawling estate was surprisingly quiet. The house was massive, secluded. Security took my phone at the door, saying it was protocol for high-level meetings to prevent leaks. At the time, it seemed plausible enough. Everyone in the industry was paranoid about keeping deals confidential. Lopez was escorted to a large living room overlooking the ocean. The setting was beautiful, but something felt off immediately. There were cameras set up in corners of the room. When I asked about them, I was told they were for security purposes. The staff was unusually quiet, moving around like shadows. The few people there were drinking heavily, even though it was early afternoon. There was a table with substances that clearly weren't just alcohol. She described being introduced to several men. Some she recognized from the music industry, others she didn't know. Diddy arrived nearly an hour later. His demeanor was different, overly energetic, eyes intense, talking fast. He made a big show of greeting everyone, but barely acknowledged me beyond a quick kiss on the cheek. Then he announced we were waiting for one more very important guest before the meeting could begin. The prosecutor approached with another piece of evidence, a date book from 2001 with Lopez's handwriting. She identified it as her personal calendar from that period. "Can you read what you wrote for February 9th, 2001? The prosecutor asked. Lopez looked at the page. Hampton meeting. D. Bad feeling. Never again. Her voice wavered slightly for the first time. I wrote this the day after. She explained that the very important guest turned out to be a young woman, perhaps 19 or 20, who seemed disoriented when she arrived. The woman was introduced as an emerging talent, but was given a drink immediately and guided to sit between two executives. The meeting never materialized, Lopez continued. There was no discussion of business, no presentations, no talk of collaborations. Instead, it evolved into something that felt orchestrated. People moving to different rooms, music getting louder, more substances appearing. I intervened, Lopez said firmly. I told her she didn't have to do anything she didn't want to do. I offered to get her a car home. The reaction was immediate and hostile. Diddy pulled me into another room. He was furious. He said I was ruining an important connection and embarrassing him in front of people who matter. But what disturbed me most was when he said, "This is nothing. You have no idea what happens at the real parties." Lopez took a sip of water, then continued with renewed determination. The prosecutor guided her to elaborate on what she called systematic patterns she observed during her relationship with Diddy. It wasn't just one incident or one bad night, she explained. Looking back, I can see there was a methodology to how he operated, not just with me, but with everyone in his orbit. Lopez described how Diddy maintained separate circles of people, who rarely interacted with each other. There were the public friends, celebrities, business partners, people who enhanced his image. Then there were what he called his real friends, people who handled problems, who knew secrets, who did the things that couldn't be traced back to him directly. The prosecutor displayed several photos showing Diddy with different groups at various events. Lopez identified people in each image, categorizing them as she spoke. These were the image enhancers, she said, pointing to a photo of Diddy with several A-list celebrities. And these, she continued, indicating another photo with less familiar faces, were what he called his fixers. They were never in official pictures, never mentioned in interviews, but they were always nearby. She described how information was strictly controlled within Diddy's environment. Phones would be collected at certain gatherings. Conversations would stop when certain people entered rooms. Sometimes he'd suddenly insist on going for a walk on the beach, or turning up music very loud when discussing particular topics. At the time, it seemed paranoid. Later, I understood it was strategic. Lopez explained how Diddy used both rewards and consequences to maintain control. If you were loyal, doors opened. Opportunities appeared. Problems disappeared. But if you questioned things or pushed back, there was always a price. I saw people lose jobs over seemingly minor disagreements. I saw careers stall after someone said no to him once. "Did you experience this directly?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes," Lopez admitted. "After I began distancing myself, projects I had been developing suddenly faced unforeseen complications. A film role I had been promised went to someone else without explanation. A collaboration with a producer was canceled because they had scheduling conflicts, the same producer who later worked extensively with Diddy. She described how, even years after their breakup, she would occasionally hear about Diddy mentioning her name in industry conversations. It was always subtle. People would tell me, "Sean was asking about you in a meeting," or "Diddy mentioned your project the other day." Never direct threats, just reminders that he was still watching, still potentially influential in spaces where my career operated. The prosecutor presented another piece of evidence, a series of emails from 2003, 2 years after the breakup, between Diddy and various music executives with references to Lopez's upcoming projects. "Were you aware of these discussions at the IDC time?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Lopez said, reviewing the emails with visible discomfort. "I had no idea he was still actively monitoring my career moves or commenting on them to industry decision-makers." The court took a short recess, then reconvened with Lopez returning to the stand. Her composure remained intact, but there was a new intensity to her demeanor as the prosecutor moved to the next phase of questioning. "Ms. Lopez, you've described patterns of control and manipulation that extended even beyond your relationship with Mr. Combs. Was there a point when you decided these experiences needed to be shared beyond your private circle?" Lopez nodded. "For nearly 2 decades, I told myself that moving forward was enough, that success was the best response. I focused on my work, my family, building something positive. I convinced myself that looking back served no purpose." She explained that her perspective began to shift as the Me Too movement gained momentum, and even more significantly, when she began seeing reports about Diddy's behavior surfacing in recent years. "Reading Cassie Ventura's allegations was the first breaking point," Lopez said, referring to Diddy's ex-girlfriend who had filed a lawsuit alleging years of abuse. "The patterns she described, the control, the isolation, the surveillance, were so familiar that it physically affected me. I couldn't sleep for days after that story broke." The prosecutor displayed a timeline showing various allegations against Diddy that had emerged in recent years. Lopez acknowledged that each new revelation had affected her. With each story, each lawsuit, each person who spoke up, I felt increasingly complicit in my silence. I had walked away and rebuilt my life, but others hadn't been able to. Others had suffered far worse consequences than I had. She described how she initially reached out to Cassie Ventura privately, offering support and validation. That conversation changed everything for me. Hearing her say, "I thought I was alone in this for so long," made me realize how powerful shared truth can be. Lopez explained that she began consulting with her attorneys about what legal obligations remained from the NDAs she had signed years earlier. She was advised that agreements signed under duress, or those concealing potentially criminal behavior, might not be enforceable. I still hesitated, she admitted, not because I feared legal repercussions, but because speaking publicly would mean revisiting a chapter I had worked hard to close. It would mean inviting scrutiny, speculation, people questioning why I hadn't spoken sooner. The prosecutor nodded. What finally made you decide to testify in this case? Lopez took a deep breath. 3 things happened in quick succession. First, I received a call from someone connected to Diddy's team. Not a direct threat, but a friendly reminder that old agreements still matter, right after I had privately expressed support for Cassie. Second, I learned that a young artist I've been mentoring was invited to what was described as an exclusive networking event at a private residence, with details that sounded eerily similar to patterns I recognized. I warned her not to go, and later discovered it was connected to Diddy's circle. And finally, she continued, her voice unwavering, I realized that my silence was protecting systems that continue to harm others, and I couldn't live with that anymore. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted as the prosecutor announced they had no further questions. It was the defense's turn for cross-examination. Diddy's lead attorney approached the stand with measured confidence, but there was tension in his movements. Ms. Lopez, thank you for your testimony, he began, his tone professionally cordial. I'd like to clarify a few points, if I may. What followed was a careful attempt to reframe the narrative, suggesting that memories from over 2 decades ago might be colored by time, by subsequent media coverage, by changing cultural perspectives. Lopez listened attentively, responding with unwavering precision. When the attorney suggested her recollections might be influenced by recent allegations against his client, she leaned slightly forward. My memories haven't changed, she said firmly. What's changed is my willingness to speak them aloud. The defense strategy shifted, moving to highlight the successful professional collaborations between Lopez and Diddy during their relationship. The attorney displayed charts showing career growth, album sales, positive media coverage from that period. Isn't it true that your relationship with Mr. Combs coincided with significant professional advancement for you? He asked. Success and abuse aren't mutually exclusive, Lopez replied. People in harmful situations still go to work, still achieve things. Sometimes they achieve specifically to create independence from their abuser. The courtroom grew increasingly tense as the defense attorney approached a more aggressive line of questioning. You've described feeling uncomfortable at certain industry gatherings, yet photographs from this period show you attending numerous events with Mr. Combs, often smiling. How do you explain this contradiction? Lopez didn't hesitate. Have you ever seen an actress perform? Creating a public image was part of my job. More importantly, it was a survival skill. The attorney produced additional documents, old interviews, where Lopez had spoken positively about Diddy years after their breakup. In this 2006 interview, you called your relationship with Mr. Combs an important chapter in your life, and said you had no regrets. Were you being untruthful then, or are you being untruthful now? Lopez looked directly at him. Neither. I said what was safe to say. Public figures navigate complex realities, career considerations, legal constraints, personal safety. The absence of the whole truth isn't the same as a lie. The defense attorney's frustration became increasingly apparent as each attempted reframing was met with composed, thoughtful responses. Finally, he tried a more direct approach. Ms. Lopez, Isn't it convenient that your suddenly recovered memories align so perfectly with current allegations against Mr. Combs? Some might suggest you're simply joining a bandwagon of accusations. Before the prosecution could object, Lopez responded, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of intensity that silenced the room. There's nothing convenient about this. Testimony. Do you think I wanted to revisit this chapter of my life? Do you think I enjoy having my personal trauma dissected in a courtroom? Do you think I couldn't foresee the questions, the doubts, the scrutiny this would invite? She straightened in her seat. The convenient choice would have been continued silence. The convenient choice would have been looking the other way, while others came forward alone. I'm not here because it's easy or beneficial. I'm here because it's necessary. Lopez turned slightly to address the jury directly. I didn't come forward because the legal case needed one more voice. I came forward because silence has power only when we choose to maintain it. And I'm done making that choice. When Jennifer Lopez stepped down from the witness stand, she didn't look like someone seeking validation or victory. She looked like someone who had finally set down a heavy burden carried for far too long. The courtroom remained absolutely silent as she made her way toward the exit, her steps measured, her gaze forward. Diddy, for the first time since the trial began, appeared, genuinely shaken. His usual controlled demeanor had crumbled. His hand trembled visibly as he reached for a water glass, missing it entirely on the first attempt. His attorney leaned over, whispering urgently, but Diddy seemed beyond hearing. For several long moments, he stared at nothing, his expression vacant, yet somehow furious. The prosecution's case, already strong, had gained a powerful new dimension. What had been primarily about specific incidents was now revealed as a pattern spanning decades, affecting multiple lives, enabled by an industry network of silence and compliance. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy erupted instantly. News alerts interrupted regular programming. Social media platforms crashed temporarily under the volume of activity. Hashtags formed, spread, and evolved within minutes. Lopez made no statement to the press. She exited through a secured area, her security team ensuring she could leave without facing the wall of cameras and questions. But her testimony had already begun reverberating throughout the entertainment industry. Within hours, statements were released. Publicists worked overtime. Crisis management teams were activated across multiple entertainment companies. Former colleagues of both Lopez and Diddy found their phones ringing constantly, their past associations suddenly under intense scrutiny. Most telling was the wave of private industry messages, texts, calls, emails exchanged between people who had worked in entertainment during that era. Did you know? I always suspected. Remember when? The shared recognition of patterns witnessed but never previously acknowledged openly. The public reaction transcended mere celebrity gossip. It sparked conversations about power dynamics, about the true cost of success in certain industries, about the complex reasons for silence and the courage required to break it. For Diddy, the impact was immediate and devastating. Additional witnesses came forward in the following days, citing Lopez's testimony as their inspiration. Business partners began distancing themselves. Streaming platforms quietly removed his content from featured playlists. The carefully constructed empire began showing visible cracks. The trial continued, but something fundamental had shifted. What had been a case about specific allegations transformed into something larger, an examination of systems that had protected powerful figures for decades, of networks of influence that had silenced countless voices. Lopez's final words on the stand became the enduring headline of the day. Silence has power only when we choose to maintain it. And as this case continues to unfold, we'll bring you every development. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell to stay updated on this story and others. Your support helps us continue bringing you the truth behind the headlines.